Queen Elizabeth begins her final journey. Her coffin made its way to Westminster Abbey. A full military guard accompanied the departed monarch, part of an ancient ceremony combining church, state, and the royal family's history. Elizabeth's grandchildren followed her into the Abbey. Followed by her son, King Charles III, and the Queen Consort, Camilla. The Dean of Westminster Abbey introduced the service.
Here, where Queen Elizabeth was married and crowned, we gather from across the nation, from the Commonwealth, and from the nations of the world, to mourn our loss, to remember her long life of selfless service, and in sure confidence to commit her to the mercy of God, our Maker and Redeemer. Come, ye blessed
Redemption
children of my Father,
and remembrance. Britain's Prime Minister Liz Truss was confirmed by the Queen just 2 days before her death. She read a lesson from the Bible.
I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be.
The Archbishop of Canterbury paid tribute to the Queen's lifelong mission.
Her late Majesty famously declared on a 21st birthday broadcast that her whole life would be dedicated to serving the nation and Commonwealth. Rarely has such a promise been so well kept. Few leaders receive the outpouring of love that we have seen.
Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses.
A fanfare, and the nation fell silent for 2 minutes. The mourners paid tribute to their new monarch. And Queen Elizabeth II headed for her final resting place.
Those events, of course, happened this morning. And the Queen had just had the committal service in St. George's Chapel in Windsor, where my colleague Jack Parrock is standing by. Jack, what was it like during that ceremony in Windsor? You've been there all day. What's the mood there?
Well, we've just had some of the dignitaries, actually, that were within St. George's Chapel. They are actually, many of them, leaving up this road as they've exited that service. Obviously, the Queen's body now goes to be interred in a private ceremony with just the family in attendance. I think it was a really, really powerful ceremony. And one of the things that's stood out, and we've heard people talking about, is this image of the King with clear tears in his eyes. Absolute sadness. You can see it on his face. And at the end of the day, while this is a monarchy changing hands from the Queen to the King, it is also the funeral of his mother. It's been quite a powerful moment, and also one of the things I think that people have been very impressed with, and we know the Queen herself had a strong hand in, is the music of the ceremonies, rousing sort of angelic choral music, especially in Westminster Abbey earlier, and more sombre music during the committal service that's just taken place here in Windsor. As I say now, this moves on to a very private affair. We saw the royals leaving the chapel, and they will now head up shortly for that committal ceremony, where Prince Charles, the Queen's late husband, is also buried.
Now, Jack, we've seen such an outpouring of support. Do you think this bodes well for the future of the British monarchy?
I think they'll probably say that it will themselves. I think that they will hope, I think, that this funeral and these weeks plus long of mourning for the Queen, these 5 days lying in state with so many thousands of people going to pay their respects, will show that in this country there is a huge amount of support for the monarchy. There are always questions about their position. They hold political position as the constitutional monarchy, a functional position to allow the Parliament to act as the authority, the democratic authority here in the country. And I think what we've seen is a really big event that the royals have put on. The media have obviously been in full attendance from all over the world, here in Windsor and in Westminster and at Westminster Abbey, etc. And I think that they will feel that what they've done is shown the best of British, firstly for the Queen and also for the international community. And that is part of their role, to be on show. This is a private affair. This is a funeral for their family, but it is also a symbolic funeral for the country and for the world.
Now, you mentioned politics earlier, which has virtually come to a standstill during the lying in state of the late Queen. Tomorrow is the start of a new era, if you will, politically as well. What's on the agenda?
A lot of things, Gert. You're absolutely right to say the death of the Queen, and prior to that, the leadership race for the Conservative Party that has resulted in Liz Truss becoming Prime Minister, has meant that there's been pretty much nothing happening politically at a time when energy prices are soaring. Other blocs, the European Union, the Americans, and indeed all over the world, parliaments and governments have been racing to try and tackle that issue, and there is absolutely no question that Liz Truss will get into her office tomorrow, and after all of this pageantry, all of this pause that has happened in this country, will be racing to try and make changes, to try and sort out what Britain is going to do about that energy crisis. The people that have been out on the streets maybe paying their respects to the Queen, but they'll also be paying their bills in the coming months that are going up by 3-digit percents, to 100, 150% in some cases. And that is really the top of the in tray for Liz Truss, the new Prime Minister, that really hasn't done anything. The Queen died only 2 days after she invested her.
Jack Pack at Windsor Castle. Thank you very much, Jack. And coming back to the studio here, Robin Merrill is still with me. Wrap it up for us, your final thoughts about today's events.
Well, an extraordinary day for an extraordinary woman, it has to be said, full of pomp and pageantry. As I said, I agree with Jack, the music was quite magnificent. I particularly spoke about the bagpipers, which really was very emotional. There was a certain amount of gratefulness, I had a feeling, gratefulness for her service over 70 years, an celebration of an extraordinary life of service and a fitting farewell to the Elizabethan era.
Robin Merrill, thank you very much. Now, the death of Queen Elizabeth has triggered an outpouring of sentiment in Hong Kong as well, one of the last former British colonies, which was handed over to China 25 years ago. The collective grief is not just about mourning the late Queen, though. It's also about remembering what many view as the golden era of Hong Kong. But even that nostalgia is becoming taboo under Chinese rule, as our correspondent Phoebe King reports.
Since the Queen's passing, a shop selling British colonial Hong Kong items such as coins, stamps and medals is welcoming 10 times more customers than usual. It's founded by Brian Ong. The royalty collector didn't expect people coming for tearful commemoration.
They feel like they're losing an old friend or even a family member. She's more than a queen. It's also because life in Hong Kong wasn't that good in the past 2 decades, with retrogression in many ways. People miss the past, not because they like or want colonialism, but purely because it was the good old days. I think that's being reflected through mourning the Queen.
Such sentiments are more visible at the British consulate, surrounded by a sea of flowers. People are queuing for up to 4 hours in the heat to sign the Book of Condolences. The colonial era is still in many people's memories in Hong Kong, which was ruled by Britain for 156 years before its handover to China in 1997.
The most precious thing Britain left us is a social system with lots of freedoms to pursue our goals.
The education was better. We were happier, less stressed and restricted.
Britain didn't give us much in the way of democracy, but overall, it did more good than harm.
Hong Kong people gave the Queen a Cantonese nickname, the Boss Lady, showing a special affection. The outpouring of mourning is not only a matter of nostalgia, but mixed with grievances and discontent over the Chinese rule, and even a gesture of defying the current repression. The Queen visited Hong Kong twice during the 70s and 80s, when social reforms were rolled out after anti-colonial riots to transform the small city into a world financial hub. Today, public facilities named after Queen Elizabeth are markers of Britain's legacy to modern Hong Kong. Hong Kong was one of few British colonies not allowed to determine its own future. Born in 1980 and educated in colonial government schools, Brian Ong said he was never taught to be a British patriot. Last year, he opened a private museum. This certificate, signed by the Queen and Prince Philip, is among the most precious in his 10,000-item collection.
I've never considered myself British. I'm 100% a Hong Konger who loves British culture. All histories are meaningful, whenever they happened, no matter good or bad. We shouldn't erase any part of it just because we don't like it. All of us should respect our past.
It's not only to preserve relics, but also the identity of his hometown.